Omega hid in the woods for 15 years until the Alpha King heard her cry and found his mate. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to our main character. Sarah Willow had hidden in the woods for 15 long years. The forest was her only home, her only sanctuary, where the world and its cruel judgments could not reach her. Every day, she wandered through the trees, the quiet whispers of nature her only company. The wind, the rustling leaves, the distant calls of birds, these sounds filled the silence, but they did nothing to ease the loneliness that gnawed at her heart. She had once been a part of the world, a member of her pack, but after her rejection as an Omega, she had been cast out. Left to fend for herself, without the protection or comfort of family, she became a ghost in the woods. 15 years. She had survived, but only just. The pain of being rejected, of being seen as nothing more than a burden, still haunted her. But there was one thing Sarah had never been able to erase from her mind, the way the Alpha King's voice echoed in her thoughts, the way his presence had always lingered just beyond her reach. Aiden Thornridge. The Alpha King who ruled the Northern Territories with an iron fist, the man whose name struck fear into the hearts of his enemies. For years, she had heard whispers of him, of his strength, of his cold heart. He was a man who had never shown mercy to anyone, a man whose heart had been sealed off from the world by the curse that bound him. But now, in her solitude, Sarah had learned to listen to the world around her, to feel the subtle changes in the air. And one evening, as the moon rose high above the forest, Sarah's ears caught a sound that stirred something deep within her. A cry. A voice. It was faint, at first, barely more. Then a whisper, but it was enough to make her pause. A cry. Not of sorrow or pain, but of something else, a longing. And in that moment, Sarah felt it. A connection. It was as if something inside her had awakened, something that had been dormant for so long. She felt drawn to that cry, as if it were calling her, as if it were pulling her toward something. The sound was distant, but it resonated within her heart. She stood there in the quiet of the night, listening to the wind and the trees, and then, just as the cry reached her ears once again, she knew. She had to follow it. She had to go. Without thinking, without hesitation, Sarah moved through the trees, her feet carrying her in the direction of the sound. She moved quickly, driven by an instinct she couldn't explain, as if the forest itself were guiding her. And then, she saw him. The Alpha King. Aiden Thornridge stood before her, tall and commanding, his presence filling the space around him. His silver-gray eyes locked onto hers, and in that instant, Sarah knew. He was here. He had heard her. And she had found him. She had found her mate. Sarah's heart raced as she stood before Aiden Thornridge, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, the air heavy with the unspoken tension between them. She had never imagined this moment would come, let alone in such a way. 15 years of hiding, of living in solitude, had led to this very encounter. Sarah's eyes met Aiden's silver-gray ones, and for a moment, everything else faded into the background. His gaze was intense, not with anger, but with something deeper, curiosity, maybe, or perhaps something more. "You're here," Aiden said, his voice deep, commanding, yet surprisingly gentle. Sarah could hardly believe the words. She had never been seen before, never been wanted. And yet here was the Alpha King, standing before her as though fate had finally brought them together. I never thought this day would come," Sarah whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. She could feel the weight of his presence, like the whole world was watching them, but it felt strangely comforting, like she had found something she never knew she needed. "Neither did I," Aiden replied, taking a step closer. To her. The way he moved was fluid, confident, yet there was a weariness in his eyes, something that spoke of the burdens he carried. Sarah felt a strange pull within her, a connection that seemed to go beyond the physical, as though their souls were intertwined by some invisible force. It was the kind of feeling she had only heard about in stories, when two people were meant to be together, no matter the odds, no matter the time or distance that had kept them apart. "You heard me," Sarah said, almost in disbelief. "You actually heard me." Aiden nodded, his expression softening. "I heard your cry, your pain. It called to me, like a part of me that had been missing. I didn't understand it at first, but now I do. You're mine, Sarah. You've always been mine." The words sent a shiver down Sarah's spine, but it wasn't fear. It was something else, something powerful, something that made her feel seen for the first time in years. "But I'm nothing," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "I'm just an omega. I've been nothing my whole life." Aiden reached out, gently cupping her face in his hand, his touch surprisingly warm against her cold skin. "You are everything to me, Sarah," he said, his voice low but filled with an undeniable certainty. "You are not nothing. You are everything I've been searching for." Sarah's breath caught in her throat as Aiden leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. The moment felt surreal, like she had stepped into a dream, and for once, she allowed herself to believe it. The years of pain, rejection, and loneliness melted away in the warmth of his embrace. "I've spent my life searching for a way to break the curse that binds me," Aiden continued, his voice barely a whisper now. "But I see now that the answer was always you. You are the key to my freedom, Sarah. And I will never let you go." Sarah felt her heart swell with emotion as she looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what this means," she said softly. "But I feel it, too. I feel like I've been waiting for you my entire life." Aiden smiled, his expression tender as he wiped away the tear that had slipped down her cheek. "Then we'll face whatever comes together," he said, his voice filled with promise. "You and me, Sarah. Always." With those words, Sarah knew that her life had changed forever. No longer was she the broken, discarded Omega. She was something more now. She was his, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The forest around them seemed to breathe with new life, and for the first time in 15 years, Sarah felt a sense of belonging. She wasn't alone anymore. Aiden Thornridge, the Alpha King, had found her. And she had found him. As Sarah stood there, her heart still racing from the intense emotions of the moment, Aiden took her hand in his. The connection between them felt undeniable, like two parts of a whole finally coming together. They stood in the forest, surrounded by the tall trees that had once been her only companions, but now they seemed to fade into the background, insignificant compared to the bond they were forming. Aiden's touch was firm, reassuring, but there was a tenderness in his grip that made Sarah feel safe for the first time in years. His silver-gray eyes never left hers, as if searching for something, perhaps confirmation that this was real, that they were meant to be. "We need to go," Aiden said, his voice steady, though there was a trace of urgency in it. "The curse is getting worse. I can feel it, and it will only grow stronger if we don't act quickly." Sarah nodded, understanding the weight of his words. She had never seen Aiden like this before, so vulnerable, yet so resolute. There was a danger surrounding them, something dark and powerful, but she didn't feel afraid. With him by her side, she knew she could face anything. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice filled with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "To the Blackwood Citadel," Aiden replied. "It's the only place that might have the answers we need. It's where I've been hiding from my past. But now, it's the only place where we can truly break this curse." Sarah felt a rush of emotions. The Blackwood Citadel was a place of legend, a place of power and mystery. It was said to be the heart of the Northern Territories, where the strongest alphas lived and where the most ancient magic was stored. But it was also a place where no one dared to go, where the shadows ruled. The very thought of entering that dark, haunted place sent a shiver down her spine. But she didn't hesitate. She couldn't. "Let's go," Sarah said, her voice filled with a newfound determination. "We'll face whatever comes together." Aiden smiled at her, his eyes softening for a moment. "Together," he echoed. With those words, they turned and began their journey, leaving behind the forest that had sheltered Sarah for so long. As they walked, Aiden spoke of the curse that bound him, of the shadows that plagued him, and the history that led him to this moment. Sarah listened intently, her heart aching for him. She had always felt a deep connection to him, even before they had met, but now, hearing the depth of his pain, she understood him in ways she never thought possible. The road to the Blackwood Citadel was long and treacherous, filled with obstacles they could not predict. But with every step, Sarah felt the bond between them growing stronger. It was as if their souls were tethered, and no matter what challenges they faced, they would face them together. By the time they reached the Citadel's gates, the sky had darkened, and the full moon cast an eerie glow over the landscape. The Citadel loomed before them, its tall, jagged towers stretching into the night sky. Sarah felt a sense of awe, but also trepidation. This place held secrets that could change everything. "We're here," Aidan said, his voice low, almost reverent. He turned to her, his gaze steady. "This is where it all ends, Sarah. This is where we break the curse and begin our new life." Sarah's heart fluttered at his words. She knew their journey was far from over, but in that moment, she felt a sense of hope, something she hadn't felt in years. Together, they would face the darkness that lay ahead, and nothing could tear them apart. As they stepped forward, the gates of the Blackwood Citadel slowly creaked open, welcoming them into the unknown. Sarah didn't know what awaited them inside, but she knew one thing for certain: she was no longer alone. Aidan was by her side, and they would face whatever came together. The gates of the Blackwood Citadel groaned open, their ancient hinges protesting the disturbance after years of stillness. The moonlight bathed the citadel in an eerie glow, casting long, twisted shadows across the stone walls. Aidan and Sarah stood before the gates, their hearts beating in unison, filled with a sense of both anticipation and fear. This was the place where everything would change. With a deep breath, Aidan stepped forward, his grip on Sarah's hand firm but gentle. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. Sarah nodded, though she could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. She had come this far, and there was no turning back now. Together, they walked into the citadel, the sound of their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. The citadel, with its towering spires and dark, foreboding corridors, seemed alive, its walls whispering secrets of the past. The air was thick with magic, the kind of magic that had once been so powerful, it could shape the world itself. As they moved deeper into the citadel, Sarah felt a strange pull, a magnetic force that seemed to draw her toward something. It was as if the citadel itself recognized their arrival, as if it had been waiting for them. They passed through grand chambers, their marble floors polished to a mirror-like sheen, and into a vast hall at the center of the citadel. The hall was dimly lit by candles that flickered in the corners, casting a soft glow on the ancient tapestries that hung on the walls. In the center of the hall stood a massive stone pedestal, adorned with symbols that Sarah could not understand. The pedestal seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, its surface glowing faintly with an inner light. "This is it," Aidan whispered, his voice filled with reverence. "The heart of the citadel. This is where it all began." Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine as she gazed at the pedestal. There was something about it that called to her, something that made her feel both afraid and excited. She stepped forward, her hand reaching out toward the pedestal, and as her fingers brushed the cool stone, a wave of energy surged through her. It was as if the citadel itself had come alive, and for a moment, Sarah felt a connection to it, a connection to something ancient and powerful. Aidan watched her, his eyes filled with a mix of awe and concern. "Be careful," he warned, but Sarah was already lost in the moment. She closed her eyes and let the energy wash over her, feeling it course through her veins, filling her with strength and warmth. She could feel the curse that had bound Aidan for so long, the darkness that had consumed him, and she could feel it unraveling, piece by piece, as the power of the citadel worked its magic. "It's working," Aidan said, his voice low and filled with wonder. "The curse, it's breaking." Sarah opened her eyes, and she saw the light surrounding her begin to fade, leaving behind a sense of peace and calm. The weight that had hung over her heart for so long seemed to lift, and she felt a sense of clarity that she had never known before. She turned to Aidan, her eyes meeting his, and in that moment, she knew. This was their moment. The curse was broken, and they were free. Aidan reached out to her, his hand brushing against her cheek, his touch tender and gentle. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice filled with gratitude. "You've done it. You've freed me." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with happiness. We've done it, she corrected, her voice filled with love and certainty. Together. They stood there for a moment, locked in each other's gaze, before the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. They turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows, a figure cloaked in darkness. You've broken the curse, the figure said, its voice cold and distant. But you have no idea what you've awakened. Aiden tensed, his protective instincts kicking in, but Sarah placed a calming hand on his arm. Who are you? She asked, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. The figure stepped forward, its face emerging from the shadows, revealing a pair of glowing red eyes. I am the one who was supposed to break the curse, the figure said, its lips curling into a twisted smile. But now, you've awakened something far worse. The figure in the shadows stepped forward, its red eyes glowing like embers in the dark. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she tightened her grip on Aiden's arm. She could feel the tension radiating from him, his body stiffening as the air between them thickened with the unfamiliar presence. The figure's voice, cold and detached, echoed through the hall like an omen of something much darker. You've done it now, it said. With a twisted grin. By breaking the curse, you've awakened the very power that was meant to remain dormant. Aiden's jaw clenched, his silver-gray eyes narrowing. Who are you? He demanded, his voice steady but filled with an undeniable edge. The figure raised its head slightly, the darkness around it shifting as if responding to its presence. I am someone who was meant to be forgotten. Someone whose power was sealed away long ago. But now, thanks to you, that seal is breaking. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What do you want? She asked, her voice firm despite the fear creeping up inside her. The figure tilted its head, as though amused by her question. What do I want? It repeated. I want what was stolen from me. I want the power that should have been mine. And now, because of you, I am free to claim it. Aiden stepped forward, positioning himself in front of Sarah. Stay back, he ordered, his voice a low growl. We won't let you take anything from us. The figure's smile widened, its glowing eyes flickering with dark amusement. Oh, but you already have, it said softly. The curse may be broken, but the balance has shifted. And now, you will face the consequences. Sarah's heart raced as the air around them seemed to grow heavier, the oppressive energy in the room thickening. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice shaking slightly. The figure let out a soft chuckle, its eyes flickering with a malevolent light. The curse was not the true prison, it explained. The true prison was the magic that bound your souls together. By breaking the curse, you've set something far more dangerous in motion. You've awakened the bond between you and me. Aiden's hand tightened around Sarah's, his grip protective and firm. You're lying, he growled, his voice filled with disbelief and anger. We're not bound to you. The figure stepped closer, its presence now overwhelming, filling the room with a palpable sense of darkness. We are all connected now, it said, its voice like a whisper in the back of their minds. The magic that binds you and the curse that controlled me, they are intertwined. And now, the only way to stop it is to face the consequences of your actions. Aiden stepped forward again, his body tense with the need to protect. Sarah. We'll face it together, he said, his voice unwavering. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. The figure paused, its smile faltering for a brief moment. Together, it repeated, as though the word was foreign to it. You truly believe that you can defeat me? You who have no idea what you've unleashed. Sarah stood tall beside Aiden, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't understand everything the figure was saying, but she knew one thing for certain, she wasn't going to let it tear them apart. We may not know everything, she said, her voice strong despite the fear that still clung to her. But we know we're stronger together. And we'll fight whatever comes. The figure's laughter echoed through the hall, a sound that seemed to reverberate off the walls. We shall see, it said, its voice growing darker. But remember this, Alpha King and Omega, you've broken the curse, but now, you must face the true test. The power you've awakened cannot be undone. The bond that ties you to me will either destroy you, or it will make you stronger. The figure stepped back into the shadows, its form disappearing into the darkness as quickly as it had appeared. The air cleared, but the tension remained, thick and suffocating. Aiden turned to Sarah, his eyes filled with determination and worry. "We have to prepare," he said quietly. "For whatever comes next." Sarah nodded, her heart still racing, but now, there was something else, hope. Despite the danger that lay ahead, despite the uncertainty of their future, she knew one thing: they would face it together. And that was enough to make her believe they could overcome anything. The silence that followed the figure's departure was deafening. Sarah and Aiden stood in the dimly lit hall, the weight of the words they had just heard hanging heavily in the air. Despite the lingering tension, a new determination settled within Sarah's chest. Aiden turned to her, his expression unreadable for a moment, before he reached out and cupped her face gently in his hands. "We'll find a way through this," he said softly, his voice laced with both resolve and a hint of uncertainty. "I won't let anything happen to you." Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude for his strength, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something dark loomed on the horizon, something they had yet to fully comprehend. "I believe you," she replied, her voice steady but filled with the unspoken fear of the unknown. "But we need to be ready. We can't face this blindly." Aiden's gaze softened, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her close for a moment. The warmth of his embrace reassured her, but her mind remained sharp, focused on the strange words the figure had left behind. The bond that tied them to the mysterious entity, the consequences that came with breaking the curse, everything felt like it was spiraling toward something they couldn't control. "We have to go back to the heart of this place," Aiden said suddenly, his voice breaking through her thoughts. "The Citadel's magic. The answers we need are there, hidden beneath all the power that's been locked away for so long. We have to find them, or we'll never be able to break the bond fully." Sarah pulled back slightly, her brow furrowed in thought. "How do we even begin to search for something so elusive?" Aiden smiled, a faint glimmer of confidence in his eyes. "We don't need to search. We need to unlock it. The Citadel has been waiting for someone to awaken its true power. And now that you're here, it'll respond to you." Sarah hesitated. The idea of tapping into such an ancient force was both thrilling and terrifying. What if it's too much? What if I can't control it? Aiden gently brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch tender. "You won't be alone. I'm with you every step of the way." His words reassured her more than she could admit, and with that, a surge of courage blossomed within her. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead. Together, they would find the answers. Aiden pulled away from her slowly and turned toward the towering staircase that led to the heart of the Citadel. "Let's go," he said, his voice steady. "There's no time to waste." Sarah followed him, her steps confident and resolute. As they ascended the stairs, the air grew colder, the magic of the Citadel seeming to hum with anticipation. The closer they got to the top, the more Sarah felt the weight of centuries of history pressing in on her. The Citadel was alive with power, a power that had been dormant for far too long. When they reached the top of the stairs, they were met with a massive, ornate door. The door itself seemed to pulse with energy, as if it recognized their presence. Aiden stood before it for a moment, his hand resting on the cold surface, before he turned to Sarah. "This is it," he said quietly. "Once we enter, there's no turning back." Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. She nodded, her resolve unwavering. "Let's do it." With that, Aiden pushed open the door, and they stepped into the heart of the Citadel. The room they entered was vast, its high ceiling disappearing into shadow, the walls lined with ancient runes that glowed faintly in the dim light. At the center of the room stood a large stone altar, and as they approached, Sarah felt the power in the air intensify. She could feel it, the ancient magic that had been sealed away for so long, now awakening at her presence. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something. Sarah stepped closer to the altar, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the bond between her and Aiden growing stronger, the energy around them swirling with the promise of something powerful. Aiden stood by her side, his eyes locked on hers. "This is where it all changes," he said softly. "Together, we'll unlock the secrets of this place and break the bond for good." Sarah nodded, her gaze fixed on the altar, knowing that the path ahead would not be easy. But with Aiden by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the surface of the stone. As she did, a surge of energy flooded through her, and the room seemed to come alive with light. The power of the citadel was no longer dormant, it was awakening, and with it, so too was their fate. Together, they would face whatever came next, knowing that their bond, though tested, would be their strength. And no matter what happened, they would never be alone. The moment Sarah's fingers brushed the surface of the stone altar, a surge of energy coursed through her, filling her entire being with a rush of power and warmth. It was as if the citadel itself had recognized her touch, as if it had been waiting for this moment for centuries. Aiden stood close by. His presence grounding her as the ancient magic began to stir, the air thick with the weight of untold power. The room around them seemed to come alive, the runes on the walls glowing brighter, the stone beneath their feet vibrating with the energy that surged through the citadel. Sarah felt the connection between her and Aiden deepen, the bond between them stronger than ever before. It was a strange feeling, as though everything that had happened in her life had led her to this very point. She had always felt different, like an outcast, but now she understood that everything, every moment, every hardship, had been part of the journey to this place, to this moment where the fate of both her and Aiden was intertwined. "This is it," Aiden's voice broke through her thoughts, soft but full of determination. He stepped closer to her, his hand resting gently on her back. "The power of this place is ancient, and it's tied to you now. We need to unlock it, or we won't be able to move forward." Sarah nodded, her heart racing as she focused on the altar in front of her. The energy in the room intensified, and she could feel it. This was the key, the moment they had been waiting for. She closed her eyes, focusing on the feeling inside her, the power that was beginning to awaken within her. The altar pulsed beneath her touch, and for a moment, she saw flashes, visions of the past, of battles fought long ago, of the magic that had once bound the world together. She saw the Alpha Kings of old, their strength, their wisdom, and she felt their power flowing through her, connecting her to the Citadel's history. As the visions faded, Sarah felt the warmth in her chest grow, the power solidifying, becoming one with her. She took a deep breath, her eyes still closed, and focused on the energy that now flowed freely within her. "It's happening," she whispered. Aiden watched her closely, his expression a mix of awe and concern. He could feel the change in the air as the magic of the citadel began to respond to Sarah's presence. He knew that this was the moment they had both feared and hoped for, the moment when everything would either fall into place or spiral out of control. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft but urgent. "The bond is stronger now. You can feel it, can't you?" Sarah opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. "I feel it," she replied, her voice steady despite the overwhelming energy that surrounded them. "But I think I can control it. I have to." Aiden nodded, his hand reaching out to her. "We're in this together. Whatever comes next, we'll face it as one." Sarah reached for his hand, and as their fingers intertwined, the energy in the room surged, the power within them combining and flowing through the citadel like a torrent of magic. The stone altar in front of them glowed brighter, the runes on the walls pulsing in rhythm with their hearts. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still, as though the citadel itself was holding its breath, waiting for the final act to unfold. Then, with a soft, almost imperceptible hum, the power that had been dormant for centuries began to flow freely, unlocking the secrets of the citadel and the magic within Sarah and Aiden. They stood there, together, as the citadel's ancient power surrounded them, a light so bright it seemed to fill the entire room. In that moment, they were no longer just two individuals bound by fate. They were part of something much bigger, something ancient and powerful, a force that would change the world. The glow from the altar faded slowly, but the magic still pulsed through Sarah and Aiden, stronger than ever before. "It's done," Aiden said, his voice a whisper. "We've unlocked it. The curse is broken, and we are free." Sarah looked at him, her heart filled with a sense of peace and wonder. She had always felt like an outsider, but now, with Aiden by her side, she knew she had found where she truly belonged. Together, they would face whatever came next, and together, they would change the world. The citadel, once a place of darkness and mystery, had now become a symbol of their power and their destiny. As they turned to leave, the doors to the citadel creaked open, revealing the world beyond. It was time to face the future, whatever it held, but Sarah knew one thing for certain: with Aiden by her side, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. As they stepped out of the citadel's heart, the world outside seemed both foreign and familiar. The once shadowed halls of the Blackwood Citadel had been left behind, but the weight of their recent discovery hung heavily in the air. Sarah and Aiden walked side by side, their steps in sync, their bond stronger than ever. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a soft golden light over the horizon. The world seemed to wake with them, the early morning mist still clinging to the earth like a veil. It was a new day, a new beginning. "We did it," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with awe. "We really did it." Aiden turned to her, his silver-gray eyes reflecting the light of the rising sun. "Yes, we did," he said, his voice steady but filled with the emotion of the moment. "But this is only the beginning. There's still so much we have to face." Sarah nodded, understanding the weight of his words. Despite the curse being broken, they both knew that there were forces still at play, forces they hadn't yet fully understood. They had unlocked the power of the Citadel, but what would that power mean for the world they had once known? "Do you think we're ready for what's coming?" Sarah asked, her voice soft, yet filled with a quiet determination. Aiden paused for a moment, looking out at the vast landscape before them. "I don't know what's coming," he said, his voice distant as he considered the unknown. "But I do know that we are stronger now. Together, we can face whatever happens." Sarah felt a surge of hope flood her chest. She had spent so many years hiding, running from a world that had never accepted her. But now, with Aiden by her side, she felt like she could face anything. They were no longer bound by the curse that had kept them apart. They were no longer afraid of what lay ahead. "I trust you," she said, her voice steady and sure. "We'll face it together." Aiden smiled at her, the kind of smile that was full of reassurance and warmth. "And I trust you, Sarah. You've shown me that we can overcome anything." They continued walking, their path leading them toward an uncertain future. The world was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: together, they could carve their own destiny. As they moved forward, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving, she was living. And she was living for something greater than herself. She was living for the future she and Aiden would create together. As they walked, the citadel grew smaller behind them, but its magic lingered, pulsing through the land, through the very air they breathed. The power that had once been a source of fear was now a source of hope. They had broken the chains that bound them, and now, they were free. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it was one they would face together, as equals. No longer would Sarah be the outcast. No longer would Aiden be bound by his curse. Together, they had unlocked a new world, one filled with possibilities, one where they could shape their own fate. The road ahead was still shrouded in mystery, but as they walked hand in hand, Sarah felt the weight of the past lift off her shoulders. They were no longer prisoners of their pasts, but creators of their future. And as the first rays of sunlight bathed the land in golden light, Sarah knew that whatever came next, they would face it side by side, united by the bond that had brought them together. Together, they would build a future where their love, their strength, and their shared power would lead them to greatness. As Sarah and Aiden walked hand in hand, their steps echoed through the vast, open landscape. The world around them seemed to stretch out in every direction, endless and full of possibilities. The citadel was far behind them now, but its presence lingered, like an unspoken promise of the future. With each step, Sarah felt a sense of freedom that she had never known before. The weight of the past, the fear of the unknown, seemed to fade away. There was no longer any need to hide, no need to run. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged. Aiden turned to her, his silver-gray eyes filled with an intensity that made her heart race. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly, his voice steady but filled with an emotion she couldn't quite name. "I'm with you, always." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with warmth. "And I'm with you," she replied, her voice steady, matching his intensity. "We've come this far, and together, we'll go even further." Aiden's expression softened, and for a brief moment, the weight of his past, the burden of his curse, seemed to lift. He was no longer the Alpha King burdened by a dark magic, he was simply Aiden, the man who had chosen her, who had stood by her through everything. They walked together, in sync with each other's rhythm, as if the world itself had become their ally. They didn't know what awaited them, but for the first time, it didn't matter. They were ready to face whatever challenges came their way, together. As they journeyed forward, the land around them began to change. The once dense forest opened up to reveal wide fields, the grass swaying gently in the breeze, the sun shining down from a clear blue sky. Sarah took a deep breath, inhaling the fresh air, and for the first time in years, she felt truly alive. The world was theirs for the taking. "We'll rebuild," Aiden said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "The world has changed, but we have the power to shape it. Together, we'll make sure that no one has to live in fear again." Sarah nodded, her heart echoing his words. She had seen the darkness that the world could hold, but now, she saw the possibility of light. "We will," she said softly. "We'll make it better. For everyone." They continued their journey, their footsteps leaving imprints in the soft earth. The world around them seemed to be waking up, just as they were. There was no more hiding in the shadows, no more running from the past. The future was theirs to create, and together, they would face whatever came their way. As they walked, Sarah glanced up at Aiden, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. He was her strength, her protector, but more than that, he was her equal. And she, in turn, was his. They were a team, bound by more than just fate. They were bound by choice. "No matter what happens," Sarah said, her voice filled with quiet certainty, "we'll face it together. And we'll make sure that no matter what the future holds, it's a future we can be proud of." Aiden turned to her, a smile spreading across his face. "I couldn't have said it better myself," he said softly. "Together, always." And with that, they continued forward, the horizon stretching out before them, full of unknowns but also full of hope. The journey was just beginning, but for the first time, Sarah knew they were ready. Together, they would face the world and everything it had to offer. And no matter what came next, they would face it together, as equals, as partners, as mates.